Okay, now speaking of the FBI and the media, it's a good segue into what happened on Joe Rogan's show last week. So this is fascinating to me from a couple of angles. Mark Zuckerberg, of course, the founder and CEO of Meta, which owns Facebook, went on Joe Rogan's show and admitted that Facebook in part suppressed circulation of the Hunter Biden laptop story right before the last presidential election, that they didn't ban it entirely the way Twitter did, but that they suppressed it and wouldn't allow it to be sort of pushed into people's feeds the way they might another story. And he admitted this is because the FBI had gone to Facebook and other social media companies and said, beware, the Russians are likely at it again. They definitely pushed disinformation in 2016, and we're expecting another dump. And this is how he explained it to Joe, and then I'll make my second point. So here's what he said to Joe Rogan. Watch.
So we took a different path than Twitter. Basically the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. So our protocol is different from Twitter's. What Twitter did is they said you can't share this at all. We didn't do that. What we do is we have, if something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely...
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's meaningful.
Okay. So people on the right were very agitated over this because he's admitting that they suppressed the Hunter Biden story after the FBI went to them. And it just, the FBI is having a rough couple of years. And this is just yet another piece of that story. But Zuckerberg and Facebook came out to say, this is old news. This wasn't news at all. Mark Zuckerberg said basically exactly this in open congressional testimony in October of 2020 to Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, which is so fun to say. I just want to say it again, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. So watch. So we queued it up to let you guys and the audience decide for themselves whether he already had disclosed this a couple of years ago. Listen.
Mr. Zuckerberg?
Senator, as I testified before, we relied heavily on the FBI's intelligence and alerts to us, both through their public testimony and private briefings and alerts they gave us.
Did the FBI contact you and say the New York Post story was false?
Senator, not about that story specifically.
Why did you throttle it back?
General.
Why did you throttle it back?
They alerted us to be on heightened alert around a risk of hack and leak operations, around a release of information. And Senator, to be clear on this, we didn't censor the content. We flagged it for fact checkers to review, and pending that review, we temporarily constrained its distribution to make sure that it didn't spread wildly while it was being reviewed. But it's not up to us either to determine whether it's Russian interference nor whether it's true. We rely on the FBI and intelligence and fact checkers to do that.
Okay, so my takeaway is Mark Zuckerberg did disclose this. He disclosed it publicly in October 2020, but we were busy. And, we were having a presidential election and it didn't get a lot of circulation. With respect to Joe Rogan, I don't think he actually did break this news. I think this news broke a couple of years ago and we were just drowning in a tsunami of presidential and Trump and related news. We didn't pay close enough attention. It's not a new black eye for the FBI. It's an old black eye for the FBI and Facebook, because now we know for sure, that was not Russian disinformation, that laptop was real, that Hunter Biden did all those terrible things according to himself, and the media just wasn't interested and they decided to suppress. Nonetheless, the story remains the same. The FBI went to social media companies like Facebook and tried to get them to not publish or not promote articles like the one about Hunter Biden. They claim to protect the electoral process and to prevent disinformation from getting out there. In the wake of all that's happened, gals, a lot of Americans have a tough time believing that was the true motivation. What do you make of it?
They laundered their credibility for partisan purposes. And I think it's also important to remember this was in the context of a letter that about 50 former intelligence people, many of whom we know should be treated with the utmost skepticism, sent a letter immediately saying that the laptop story looked like Russian disinformation. So the FBI didn't need to go back to Zuckerberg and say, hey, this laptop story specifically, you need to suppress it, because they did it in public with that letter. They had already set that sort of tone and said, watch out for Russian disinformation. And then when the laptop story dropped, all they had to do was release that thing publicly. And so it is a stunning level of coordination from all of our institutions, because the media essentially blacked out that story as well. The New York Post ran it, and all of these other outlets, major outlets that had run with nonsense leaks that in a better era would have been treated with the utmost skepticism coming from the intelligence community. We see this time and again. The media and the intelligence community have like the coziest relationship in the world. They took this stuff and they did nothing with it. And so you had coordination between the Biden campaign, the intelligence community, the entire social media, basically atmosphere, or all social media platforms. And it's like incredible to sit back and watch and look. And I think the reason, Megyn, you're right, that Joe Rogan clip is super viral right now is because it's not in the fray. It's a couple years later and people have that sort of hindsight being 2020. And when you look at it from the 30,000 foot view and see the forest for the trees, is just so anti-American. It's shocking.
It's a slower news cycle right now, so people have the attention to give to it. And it's a reminder on the heels of the Mar-a-Lago raid about the FBI and what it's done in the past. And it comes at an unfortunate moment for the FBI, but too bad. Nobody feels sorry for them. And I have real questions, Eliana, about whether the warning to social media companies back then was earnest about the Russian thing. You know what I mean? Like they can tell when a story is pushed by Russian bots. They know when it's originated with the Russians and when it hasn't. And let's not forget, the FBI had the damn laptop anyway. They knew at the time that this was being pushed as like potential disinformation that it was Hunter's. They fucking knew. Sorry. They knew. They had gotten it from the blind guy who was repairing it. And there was nothing in there that was not consistent with Hunter's behavior or the FBI's own investigations of Hunter and the guns and the drugs and all that shit. That's the context for them going to Facebook and saying, watch it. And then, as Emily accurately points out, all these intelligence officials get together and drop the second bomb, which is we all think it's disinformation, which they didn't either. They didn't. I don't think that was in good faith either. So it's been a long campaign, in my view, of them pushing disinformation on us.
I'm with you on all of that, Megyn. And I think the icing on the cake is former intelligence officials and media personalities coming out now in the wake of the FBI's raid on Mar-a-Lago. And their line is, thou shalt not question the integrity of law enforcement officials. Merrick Garland said that in his press conference. And, my reaction is, I'm sorry, but you guys have given us a whole lot of reasons to question the integrity of law enforcement officials. And in this case, until demonstrated otherwise, I'm going to question the integrity of law enforcement officials.
Yes.
But
they're interviewing Andrew McCabe, who's admitted to lying.
And Peter Strzok.
Another thing that struck me in the side by side of those two clips, which is a little bit far afield, but I do think it's relevant to how we get our information, is it doesn't surprise me at all that everybody missed it when this came out in congressional testimony, where Ron Johnson is talking over Zuckerberg the entire time, where he's trying to make a point. Like, that is just not conducive to an exchange of information and getting information out to people. Like, no, I'm not surprised that, probably 2 people tuned into that hearing. And then Joe Rogan, a couple years later, actually lets the guy talk. And wow, the entire thing goes viral. And in all of this, I really don't blame Facebook. Facebook had spent the 4 years of the Trump administration in the crosshairs of everybody accused of purveying Russian disinformation. So yeah, when they get a warning from the FBI that says hey, once again, you guys are in the middle of a Russian disinformation campaign, I don't blame them for what they did. I fully and wholeheartedly blame the FBI and the media for this. And it would be nice separately if in some of our congressional hearings, lawmakers spent a little bit less time talking and more time letting their, the interesting people they have in front of them, like Mark Zuckerberg, actually talk because they say interesting things.
Like so many people, I am eating healthier these days, and that is the reason why I love good olive oil. And by good, I mean fresh. Olive oil packs the most flavor and healthiest nutrients when it's fresh from the farm. Did you know that? You probably just grab it off the grocery store shelf like I was doing. And that's the problem though, okay? Because supermarket olive oils are not fresh. And that actually makes a difference. They can sit on the shelf for months, growing stale and kind of lame. You don't even know that there's another gear olive oil can shift into. And that is why I love my olive oil direct from small award-winning farms, thanks to a guy named TJ Robinson, also known as the olive oil hunter. Now, when I first tasted TJ's farm fresh oils, I fell in love with them. First, they sent me a bottle. I was like, olive oil, it's kind of all the same. No, it is not. You got to put this stuff on anything. Put it on salad, put it on veggies, pasta, meat, fish. You will taste the difference. As an introduction to TJ's Fresh Pressed Olive Oil Club, TJ is going to send you a full-size bottle. It's worth $39 of one of the world's finest artisanal olive oils, fresh from the new harvest, for $1. $1. That's all he's going to charge you, and that just covers his shipping. Best of all, with TJ's Club, there's never a commitment to buy anything, now or ever, and you can cancel your membership at any time. So get your free $39 bottle for just $1 shipping and taste the difference freshness makes. Go to harvestfreshnow.com. That's harvestfreshnow.com for a free bottle and pay just $1 shipping. harvestfreshnow.com. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.